In the past, we've done some fun experiments with candy, and today I have a new one I want to try. I want to see... Hey guys, I'm Nate. Welcome back to the workshop. In the past, we've done some fun experiments with candy, and today I have a new one I want to try. I want to see if we can make some glowing candy. That's right, candy that actually luminesces. In all of my research, I wasn't able to find any foods that actually put off light on their own, so I'm going with the next best thing, and I'm going to see if I can make candy that glows under a black light. Edible substances that glow under a black light are also fairly uncommon, and actually I was only able to find two. One of them is quinine, which has a horrendously bitter and overpowering taste, so I didn't want to use that. The other thing I found is vitamin B2, also known as riboflavin. A little bit of reading tells me that riboflavin is non-toxic, even at fairly high doses, which we aren't even going to use in this recipe. So I'm going to see if we can use this vitamin to give some bright, blacklight glow to our candy. I figured if we're going the Heart of Tafiti stone from the movie Moana. The first step will be to make a Heart of Tafiti stone that we can then mold to cast our candy in. To make our stone, I have this yellow Sculpey brand polymer clay, which you bake in the oven to make it hard. And I also have this same 2-part silicone mold rubber that we use to make our thumb molds. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of tips on how to sculpt something to look how you want, except to look up pictures of what you want it to look like and then squish it until it's in the right shape. The stone in the movie is not quite as wide as a person's palm, so I'm going to try and make it 1.5, maybe 2 inches tall. I think this seems like about a good amount of clay. If I start forming it and it's too big or too small, I can add a little bit more or take some off. Squish it around a little bit to get it kind of soft. Roll it into a sort of a ball. Not like a really good ball, but kind of round. That's sort of round. Now let's flatten that out a little bit. Kind of want a tapered edge going around. Rounded edge, nothing sharp. Alright, I think that is a pretty good approximation of the size and shape of the stone. You can see it's not quite as wide as my whole palm, but it's still got some good size to it. So now it's time to start carving in the decorations on the front of the stone. Lightly marking in where I want my lines to go. Alright, there we go. We have our nice carved out Heart of Tafiti. I've tried to match the patterns on it to the movie as well as I could. It's probably not 100%, but it's pretty good, I think. Now I need to bake this in the oven at 275 Fahrenheit or 130 Celsius for 15 to 20 minutes. Alright, I think our clay is ready to take out of the oven. Let's see how it's looking. You should really use tools, not your hands, to pull that out, but foil is so thin it doesn't conduct all that much heat. Let's let that cool down for a minute. Okay, I think our stone has now cooled down pretty well. It's looking good. Now, just to get rid of any of the little scuffs or burrs I left on the surface, I want to hit this with some sandpaper to really smooth it down. Now, it's not very rough and doesn't need a lot of changes, so I'm going to hit it with some 800 grit sandpaper, which is fairly fine, and then some 2000 grit sandpaper, which is actually very smooth. I'm hoping for a little bit of a shiny look on it. Did get a little bit of cracking along the back as it baked, but pretty minor. It's on the back. I'm not worried about it. Of course, I don't want to sand so much that I lose any of the details I carved in. But it's a pretty fine grit sandpaper, so I'm not very worried. Alright, that's with the 800. Let's move on to our 2000. 2000 grit sandpaper doesn't even really feel like sandpaper. It just kind of feels like normal paper, honestly. But it does make a difference. There we go. I think our Heart of Tafiti stone is now complete, and I think it's looking really good. So let's use our 2-part silicone mold rubber and make a mold on this stone. Now, to make sure that we are able to pour our candy into our mold, I have a little bit of this modeling clay that I'm going to attach to our Heart of Tafiti stone to make a pour spout so that it's not just completely closed up. Once the whole thing is covered in silicone, there will be an opening where this bit of clay is. That's where we'll be able to pour in the candy. So now we've got our 2-part silicone. It's just 2 putties that look, well, kind of like silly putty, really. Pull out a couple of blobs. There's a blob of purple. There's a blob of white. Those look about the same size, maybe just a smidgen more white. Now we need to squish those all together. And let's just knead this until it's all one uniform color with no more streaks in it. There we go. That looks like one smooth texture. No more streaking, no more marbling. Let's apply it to our stone. Smushing it down because I want a nice, smooth, flat surface that I can press in to really pick up all of the details of our little heart of Te Fiti here. If you recall, this stuff can actually do really good detail. On the thumb suckers, we were able to pick up Grant and my fingerprints in the thumbs. So I'm hoping that the level of detail in the stone will be no problem for it. All right, it's nice and enveloped. And I'm just gonna stick that down onto the counter and give it a nice flat spot. Hopefully that will make it so that when we're trying to pour candy into it, it will hold itself up nicely. I've also added a little bit of a thicker ridge on this side. That's where we'll cut the mold open to be able to pull out our Heart of Te Fiti stone master and the candy once we've cast it in there. Our silicone mold should only take 15 or 20 minutes to cure before we can take out the yellow Heart of Te Fiti stone inside it. And while it's doing that, we're gonna get started making our candy. As I explained, we want to use some of the coloring in the B2 vitamins in our candy to make it so it will glow under a black light. So let's take out a few of these tablets and grind them up into a powder that will hopefully dissolve into some water. You can see these are pretty bright yellow colored, although they don't look like they're anything really spectacular, just sort of yellow tablets. I'm going to start with just 2 of them and see how much powder we get out of that. 2 of these tablets into our mortar. Just start squishing it up with the pestle. I think this one's the mortar and this is the pestle, but maybe I have that backwards. That grinds up into a powder very quickly. Our candy recipe calls for 3/4 cups of water, so that's how much I have in this little pot here. I'm going to now pour our powder into our pot. Now let's do a test with our blacklight to see how much this water and riboflavin mixture will glow.
If we win, you leave my tribe in peace. This is Guna.
Hi.
And she's gonna